Hi everyone, I'm Wendy and it is soup season. So today I have 3 healthy, easy, and delicious whole food plant-based soup recipes for you. I will have the recipes linked in the description box below the video, but I want to encourage you to adjust them to suit your own tastes. The recipes are written the way I like to make these soups for my family, but I want to encourage you to learn how to cook without following a recipe exactly. So throughout the video, I'll give you lots of suggestions for how you can switch things up. First up, I have a roasted tomato soup. I made this a few weeks ago with the last batch of tomatoes we got from our local CSA. Of course, fresh local tomatoes have the best flavor, but this soup works great with any kind of tomatoes because even if they don't have the best flavor, by roasting them, we're developing the natural sweetness even more. So I washed my tomatoes, quartered them, and laid them out on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. I had about 14 decent-sized tomatoes. Depending on the type of tomato you're using, you'll need more or less. And I filled this tray pretty full. It probably would have been better to separate it into 2 trays, but it'll work out okay. In addition to the tomatoes, I have 1 yellow onion that I cut into a few pieces and 7 cloves of garlic. You can use whatever kind of onion you have on hand and add more or less garlic depending on how much you like. Then I simply throw this into the oven at around 375 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit and bake it until the tomatoes start to caramelize. Once that's out of the oven, I let it sit until it's cool enough to carefully transfer to a blender. I'm adding just a few more simple ingredients. I have a few dates that I soaked in just a little bit of vegetable broth. The sweetness of the dates will help to counteract any sour flavor from the tomatoes. And depending on how sweet you like it, you can use as many dates as you want. Then I'm also adding a little dried basil. If you have fresh basil, feel free to use that instead. It'll have an even better flavor. I carefully added that to my Vitamix. A high-powered blender will work best, but you can use a regular blender. It just won't be quite as smooth and you may need to blend it a little bit longer. After blending, I transferred this to a storage container because I was going to be bringing it over to enjoy with my parents. We had it along with a salad and my whole food plant-based grilled cheese. If you'd like to try that one, I will include a link for that video. And that's how simple that soup is. It's great if you grow your own tomatoes and have an abundance that you need to use up. Or, like I said, if you get some from the grocery store that aren't the best flavor, roasting them will make them taste better. I also like to change it up from time to time and add some bell peppers along with the tomatoes. And if you don't want a bowl of soup, you can also use this as a sauce for pasta and vegetables. The second soup I'm showing you is a classic cream of mushroom soup. I'll be honest, while I do like mushrooms in other recipes, I'm not the biggest fan of cream of mushroom soup, so I never really ate it before. But my plant-based parents love this one. They say it reminds them of their days eating Campbell's cream of mushroom, but without all of the added sodium. I start by sauteing a pint of cremini mushrooms that I've chopped into small bite-sized pieces. You can cut the mushrooms however you like. If you prefer slices, go for it. I was trying to go for that classic Campbell's mushroom soup look. If you can't find cremini, white button mushrooms would work as well. I added these to a dry pan without any oil or water. I just let the natural juices from the mushrooms cook out. And you can see as they continue to cook, lots of liquid comes out. I cooked these for about 10 minutes and I didn't add any liquid to this pan. So I'm going to continue cooking until some of that evaporates to concentrate that mushroom flavor. Then I transfer the mushrooms to a bowl and set it aside. I'm saving that little bit of mushroom broth that's left in the pan to saute my onions. Again, I have a yellow onion, but use whatever you have on hand. I just roughly chopped this onion because the rest of the soup is going to be blended. I'll saute these for about 5 minutes until they turn translucent and caramelized. I'm adding a little splash of vegetable broth to deglaze the pan, and then I'm adding tons of garlic. Once again, use as much garlic as you like. I used about 5 large cloves. I cooked that for just another minute or so before adding the rest of my ingredients. Some cauliflower, 1 can of Great Northern beans that I've drained and rinsed, and 2 cups of low-sodium vegetable broth. I put the lid on to bring that to a boil and then cooked everything for about 15 minutes. You want to cook it at least until the cauliflower is easily pierced with a fork. But in general, the rule with soup is the longer you cook it, the better the flavor will be. So if you're in a hurry, shoot for at least 15 minutes. But you could cook it longer if you have the time. Then we cook salt-free in my house, so instead of salt, I'm adding about a teaspoon of this salacious salt substitute from Local Spicery. Use your favorite salt substitute or add salt to taste. You could also use a little tamari, soy sauce, or miso paste. Like I said at the beginning, try not to be restricted by a recipe. Our taste buds adapt to what we eat regularly. So if you're used to a salt-free diet, you probably don't want any salt. But if you like to add salt, feel free to use any of the options that I mentioned. I also added a little bit of soy milk, and you can use whatever plant milk you like, and now I'm simply using an immersion blender to blend it until everything is smooth. If you don't have an immersion blender, you could carefully transfer everything to a regular blender, like I did with the tomato soup. Then I added a little bit of black pepper to taste. If you have white pepper, that's even better, so you have that perfectly white, creamy soup. But I didn't have any on hand, so I used a little black pepper. If you want a little extra flavor boost, you can also add about a tablespoon or two of nutritional yeast. It adds a really nice flavor, but if you have any trouble with nutritional yeast, it's totally optional. And I'm keeping the soup really simple today, so I'm leaving it out. Finally, I'm adding the mushrooms back in. You can cook this a little bit longer to thicken it up if needed and let the flavors come together. Finally, I have a good old-fashioned vegan chicken noodle soup. I start by sauteing 1 onion. Again, use whatever kind you like. I usually love red onion, but today I only had yellow. I cooked that until it got nice and caramelized, adding little bits of vegetable broth to deglaze the pan. Then I'm adding 4 cloves of garlic. As before, adjust the amount to your tastes. Next up, I'm adding carrots and celery, which I've chopped into a pretty small dice. I like to cut the pieces really small so I get a little bit of everything in every spoonful. But if you prefer larger pieces or even slices of carrot and celery, make this soup your own. Then I'm adding some flavor. All the measurements will be in the recipe linked below. This mixture includes parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, along with a little bit of onion and garlic powder, turmeric, and pepper. I like to measure everything out ahead of time so it's ready to go. If you measure all your spices over the hot pot, all that steam can get into your spices and cause them to clump in the jars. Then I also added a bay leaf and another salt-free seasoning. This time I'm using Stardust by Well Your World, but again, feel free to use regular salt or any other substitute you like. I didn't add it this time, but sometimes I also throw in a tablespoon of nutritional yeast. As with the mushroom soup, this adds a nice umami flavor, but it's totally optional. Next, I'm adding a 32-ounce container of vegetable broth, plus about 2 cups of water. And for the vegan chicken, I'm using soy curls today. These come dried, and I like to break them up while they're dry into smaller pieces, because once they're rehydrated, they'll get much larger. Normally when using soy curls, you'll soak them in water to rehydrate before adding to your recipes. But since we're making soup, I'm simply throwing it right into the broth. I also love to make this soup with chickpeas instead. If you're using chickpeas, you probably only need the 32 ounces of broth, but with the soy curls, you may need that extra 2 cups of water to account for the amount that absorbs into the soy curls. On that note, you can always adjust the amount of liquid. I like to start with a lower amount because you can always add more, but you can't take it away. And I personally prefer my soup to have a little less broth. But if you like it more soupy, that's an easy fix simply by adding more water or broth. Then last but not least, we have our noodles. I'm using 1 block of these millet and brown rice ramen noodles. They cook super quickly, so they work well just by adding directly to our soup. I'm breaking up the noodles into little pieces, again so I can get a little bit with every bite. I ended up adding a little more broth along with the noodles, because once again they're going to absorb some of that liquid. Then I'll cover this and let it cook until the noodles are soft. It only takes about 10 minutes with these noodles, but if you're using another kind, just check until they're done. Of course, you can also cook the noodles separately and then add them in. If you have any leftovers, the noodles will continue to absorb liquid, so after a few days, they become a little mushy. If you plan to eat this soup for multiple days, you could keep the noodles separate. I don't mind when the noodles absorb extra liquid. It still tastes great either way, so I just throw them right in. And once the noodles are ready, this soup is done. So those are 3 delicious and easy whole food plant-based soups, perfect for a cozy night in as the weather starts to get colder. If you got some ideas from this video, hit the thumbs up and let me know in the comments, what's your favorite kind of soup? Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.